this computer, screen share. Perfect. So this is Illustrator, as you can see, and you want to go and say File New for the sake of now. And by the way, I don't know if I ever talked about this because it seems very straightforward to me, but hey, I've been using Illustrator for 2 decades, right? So these are presets, right? Obviously is Illustrator telling you, hey, do you want the document for print? Do you want it for web? And now it could be for web at 1024 by 768 pixels, or for web at 1366 by 768, and et cetera, et cetera. So you have different configuration, and that's just recent. But you could go in mobile, and obviously you can choose which device you want to design for, or obviously you can go for web and choose if you want a large screen or a smaller screen, and et cetera, et cetera. Another thing you can do is what I like to do is, I know that the most typical screen resolution is 1024 wide. So I'm going to type 1000, I'm going to stay a little below, by about, 1024 by 768 is the height. So you can just type in there 1000 by 700 if you're working for screen, obviously. That is fine for me for now. Obviously here you can talk about, we're going to talk about, we talked about RGB a little bit, the very first class, and color spaces. But you remember I also told you that oftentimes in Illustrator, the default color space is CMYK. So some of you might wonder, wait a minute, why is Enrica seeing RGB in there? Because in the minute in which I typed in 1024 pixel, or maybe it was already set up like that, maybe I had clicked on this, that is 1066 by 768. That means I have a horizontal orientation, is under web, so is a template to use on the screen. Whenever you have screen art, the color space for screen art is also always RGB. If you're a tinkerer like me when I was a kid or when I was younger and I took everything apart, if you take apart a screen, like do an old screen more than a laptop, you'll see that it has 3 colors behind the screen that are actually, there are lights that are creating all the pixels combination on your screen, and that's RGB. Now, why do we want the CMYK when we are actually working for print? Is because you generally, whatever you do on the screen, you're going to hit print and it goes to a printer that has 4 cartridges, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. It has some other slots, open slots, and those are for custom colors that you might remember are called spot colors, versus CMYK RGB are process color. And spot colors are these custom colors, and there's a company that makes the cartridges for these custom colors that you cannot achieve by mixing the process colors, obviously, and that's why you need them separate. And the company that makes those is called Pantone. So a lot of those spot colors are also referred to as Pantone. And there is lots of palettes of Pantone. I don't know if you've ever seen the swatches, they're like a paint shop. You go to Sherwin-Williams to pick a paint color for your wall. They look like just like that, kind of like fan shaped and everything. But in the minute in which you go under web here and pick something up, the color space is going to be RGB, and the pixel per inch, the resolution, so how many pixel per each inch, in the minute in which you convert it to web is going to be 72 PPI. Now, the reason why I think in the minute you convert it for web is because remember, Illustrator is vector-based. So everything we do in Illustrator is all path, is all mathematical formula. But if you're building something for web, eventually you'll have to convert it to pixels because, browser don't handle vector. And when you convert it to pixel, it'll be, 72 is the resolution you want. Any questions on that? So remember, when you start your Illustrator document, you have a lot of options. And right now, for the sake of it, I actually chose the web option. Is up to you. Obviously, what you need to do, you'll know. Command 0. So what I want to show you today is a little bit of things I did not show. For example, type, right? If I go and remember there's point type, area type, or path type. I'm going to go with point type and click here. And by default puts the usual lorem ipsum. I'm going to actually write what my name was supposed to be. Sorry, I forgot. It's supposed to be an H. I'm going to select it. I'm going to do Command T. I'm going to make it really, really big. I like Arial black when I want something that is really big. Arial black right there. Big means kind of thick and fat, not necessarily big, but more like kind of a fat font. And I'm going to give it some tracking, like right here, that is spacing between the letter, like 25. I can obviously make it a lot bigger. Let me make it a lot bigger right here. So what if you use text like that, and it could be on a path or not. So it could be arch. What can you do with this text? And I'm going to actually copy it so I can show you the difference. So this is what we call editable text. In the minute in which I want to change this, for example, I realize the H should not be there. I simply double click on it. The text tool activates and I edit it. No brainer. But I cannot modify it. This typeface, this Arial black, the designer that made Arial black decided that the T, the H, the A, everything was supposed to be like that. I cannot do much about it. Another thing I can do is I can go in here, select this and do Command-Shift-O. And there is create outline. And I don't know if you notice, I'm going to go right now to the to show you, they're all little anchor points, just like when you were doing the pencil tool or the pen tool. The downside to that is you cannot edit it. Obviously, you cannot go in and take out the H. I guess you can if you go and select the H only. Let me go with a white arrow because this is grouped, but here we are. Oops, the white arrow actually does not allow me to select just the H. There we are. I click and drag to select all the anchors, and now I have the H is gone, and then I can select all of these and scoot it. But you know what I mean? I cannot just click with the T. And also when I scoot it, I'm messing up the spacing, right? Because there's a certain spacing, that tracking, right, between these. And I don't know exactly what it is here and how does this capital T interact with the A. Definitely much better if you leave it editable if you need to edit it. If you don't, though, if you want to actually change the letters, customize them. For example, if you're creating a logo or a mascot that has some, has something that has to do with water, and you want to give that sense of drops and liquidity, make it something that looks like it's dripping, you can always go there with your white arrow and grab on the anchor and say, okay, I'm going to make this come down and this come down too, and make it feel more like a drop, right? Make it kind of a little bit wider at the bottom. You get the message, and you can obviously do the same thing. Sorry, my computer is trying to install software. I just saw something flashing and I know what it is. So it might come back to us. Hopefully not during this class, but because sometimes it forces me to restart the computer and install software. But you know what I mean? That you can go in and change the type if you convert it to outline. The only downside, again, is that you cannot edit it. But that's kind of a very quick and easy trick to get some custom type to happen. Another thing I haven't really talked about much, and you will have to deal with it when you do this tracing your mascot, is you have to bring in your drawings, your sketches into Illustrator. And that means you're basically mixing the pixel stuff, that is something you scanned, a sheet or a sketch you scanned, and bring it into a vector software. Easy peasy to do, but you have three modalities, three ways to do it. One is through linking, embedding, and templating. Let me show you. So if I want to bring in, and in my case, I'm not going to bring in a sketch, I'm going to bring in a photo because I know is available, easily available on my laptop. So I'm going to do File, Place. And the default is generally that this link is checked. In my case, it's not, because I finagled with it, but the default you'll see is there. Let me find an image I wanted to find. Sorry, I prepared an image and I cannot find it. Oh, there's too much stuff in my. So let me get a different one. No biggie. Is IMG. Oh yeah, here, IMG. So this is a photo of my kid, this guy here. So I want to bring it in, and it's really big. And then this one I had prepared a different one, but it might help you because it will show you how you can scale in and fuss with it. That's okay. Let's bring in the bigger one. So when I go here, generally this is the default. And link means if I say right now place, the image will come in with an X. I'm going to zoom out, Command 0. I'm going to hold the Shift key to constrain the proportion and scale it down. And now Command 0. So Command minus allows you to zoom out. Command plus allows you to zoom in. And then if you're too close, you do Command 0, and it takes you, basically frames your artboard into that Illustrator window. So this is linked. That means it has this X in front of it. And that means that if I now hit enter, I'm happy, right? Or I deselect. And then I send it over Canvas to Enrica. Enrica will not be able to see this photo. It will, in fact, see a piece of text that says there was a path to a photo, but is not there anymore. Do you want to relink it? So that teaches you that when you're dealing with linking, what you're doing is you're creating a path between your Illustrator document and an image that is located on the local machines, oftentimes. And that means if you turn in the Illustrator document and the photo, both of them, then it'll be okay. But most people don't. They just turn in the Illustrator document, and that results in a broken link. That is not the best way to start. When someone is looking at your image, they don't want to see a mistake, right? So I recommend that if you link your image and then you know you need to turn it in, notice that when it's linked, it has an X. And when you go up in the options, you'll see that one of your options is embed. Embed occurs when your image actually lives. Notice the X is gone now. And this image now lives inside of Illustrator. So what's the advantages of the two, or the disadvantages? For linking, the advantage is your Illustrator file is going to stay beautifully small because there's simply a piece of code in there, or a line. When you open Illustrator, the first line will say, go and display on this Illustrator document the photo that is located on this, in this particular location. You know, in this case is Enrica's desktop. So the link is simply a path, super light, super easy. So if you are to do and document in Illustrator like a giant poster in which you have like 10 images in there, and all the images are high quality, and you're dealing with, oh, I got to print this, so everything is high resolution, I would probably link stuff just in case, because you don't want Illustrator to get too big, because that's when it gets corrupt. Obviously, embedding allows you to not worry about, oh gosh, I'm going to get a broken link, because everything lives inside of Illustrator. But the danger is your Illustrator file gets really, really big. Any question on these? So what is templating? So in your case, that's what you actually need. So I have my image right here. Another way I can bring it in when I go in File Place, if I know that is the right size, it generally is not the case, but I'll show you how to tweak, you know, work around it. So I'm going to go and grab the IMG something right here. Oh, this is the one I wanted. Oh, look how cute this little boy is. Let's see if this one is the right size. Yeah, this is better. So this is the image I wanted to bring in. It is linked, so forget it. But let me bring in that one as a template. Let me delete this. So when you go in and do File Place, this time I'm going to bring the one that is a little bit smaller, because that one was, the other one was so big. And I actually had prepared this one to be a little bit smaller. I keep losing it though. I have no idea why. It should be called G something, Galileo Pool. Galileo is my boy's name. So I can uncheck link and bring it in. If I don't, you can see that there's no embed that you can check. So what happens is when you uncheck link, by default, it will embed it. So I'm going to go in here and embed it right here. And then I could go and trace the face of Illustrator, of Galileo, right? So I can go in there and say, okay, great. I'm going to go now with the pen tool, make sure I have a stroke, fill in a stroke. Sorry, let me actually remove the fill, but at least have the stroke. And you can go with a pen tool and start tracing this boy's little, you know, eyes, for example. The problem is, even if I increase the stroke to be like 3 points, generally it's pretty thick. Do you see what I traced? You don't, right? So that's why templating exists, because what you can do, instead of bringing it in as a embedded, you can go and say File Place. Sorry, let me deselect File Place. But this time you're going to check, you're going to browse to that image, to the Galileo image. In my case, I know you don't have Galileo, but that's okay. And what you're going to check is template. And you say, place, wait, what happened? Oh, there it is. Wow, that's so cool. It placed it, because I had this one selected, it placed it in the same spot. That's so cool. So and it's cool because the demo was to show you why templating really helps. You can see that now I actually can see what I'm doing, what I was drawing, and I can go in and tweak it and make it right, because now I can see what's going on. My point is, templating is pretty much embedding, in which though you have a 50% opacity, and this is locked, right? So if you go in your files, you can see this guy that is locked, and this symbol is an indicator of templating. So I can turn that image on and off right here. And this one is obviously the other image that is embedded. So someone might tell me, okay, let's delete this one. I say, okay, what if I actually brought this in here as a templated, but then I realize that I need to make it smaller because it's too big. So what you want to do is you want to select that templated file, go under the options and the layers and uncheck template. And all of a sudden now you go back to embedded world and you can select it, shrink it, say, oh gosh, I started tracing it, but I know it needs to be a lot bigger or smaller, sorry, because it has a whole world around it. And obviously you might want to delete or rescale what you did. But once you're ready, you've scaled it to what it needed to be, you can go back to this file and this layer and say now is ready to be templated. Boom. So, and let's say I actually delete this layer by accident, or I'd say I don't need this image anymore. And you want to bring in an image in here, file place, and I say, oh gosh, I brought in image so-and-so, and you find out later, sorry, let me find another image, whatever I can find. Oops. Let's bring this back in. So you can actually insert this, and then later on, if you say, oh, I want to trace the eye, this boy, like, so I don't even need to scale it down, but I messed up because it's not templated. I need to template it. Any image that you brought in that was embedded, you have to embed it. That if it's not embedded, remember here it says unembed because it's embedded. But if somehow you accidentally brought it in as a link, first embed it, then go in the layer, and say, hey, I also want to template it. So now I can start drawing. The problem is, in the minute in which you take an image that you brought in originally as embedded or linked and converted to embedded, once you template it, you cannot draw on it. It's locked. So you need to create a drawing layer on top. And then now you can go in with the pen tool and draw. So the easiest, peasiest thing to do is if you know for sure that your image is already sized correctly, bring it in as file place and choose template. And it's going to be placed in the middle of the screen, is going to be locked, and then you start tracing. If somehow you don't know if it's the right scale, if it's, the right way, bring it in as embedded, and then go in the layer, template it, and then create a tracing layer on top. I generally call this one drawing layer, and this one is just a template. Now, very important to keep in mind, if you decide that this is the way to go, is bring in an image, then go in and trace it. That is very typical in Illustrator. You generally start with sketches and then you trace it in. Once that you're done, so imagine this was a complete Illustrator, was completely covered up. I couldn't even see the photo of Galileo anymore. Because the photo of Galileo is fairly large and it's just increasing the size of your file for no reason because it's all covered up. Just remember at the very end when you're done, to go and delete this. So if somehow, is your file is fairly big, that bitmap file is large, there's no risk that your Illustrator file gets corrupted or gets any problem because of the file size being too big. So this is the difference between templating, linking, and embedding. Is all good. Does anybody have any questions? So as I said, the lecture today is more to serve your needs to do the mascot. When you start, after today's little design critique, work in progress critique, you will have for sure the winner sketch to bring into Illustrator. You bring it in because you're today, you had to turn in refined sketches, means sketches ready to go to being traced. So you bring it into Illustrator using this technique I just showed you, likely templated or bring it in as embedded, scale it correctly, then go in the layer and template it so it's locked and low opacity. And then you go in and trace it, get rid of the image that you started from because you don't need it anymore. What else can we do? Once you trace it, your images at first will be just regular, like typical images that are very flat. You know, my point is the very typical drawing at first is pretty flat because the strokes are kind of fairly uniform. And I remember showing you in the very first day of Illustrator when we did that exercise called selecting that had all that grass around the pond. I had showed you, let me actually copy this a few times so I can show you what you can do with it. Let me scale it a little bit smaller and then show you how you can use different technique to superpower your strokes, to make your strokes more interesting. You remember the very first day what we did is, and by the way, obviously remember once you do something, if you feel like, gosh, I wish it was a little bit more curvy, there's a little bit too boxy, you can go in there and edit it galore. And I encourage you to do that to make sure that before you do what I'm doing next, that is refine the stroke, it'll be nice that you kind of, you know, give it the shape you want. You can always go in later and tweak it again. So it's no biggie, but just letting you know that it helps if you feel like your stroke look the way you want them to have them at the end in terms of positioning. In terms of the stroke itself, do you remember I showed you can go in here and say, hey, I wanted to, let's say, taper on both ends. So you can see the difference between this one and this one. Maybe if we increase the stroke even a little more, you can see it right there. Another thing you can do is you can, instead of basic here, you can say, I want it to be like a pencil, you know, something that has more like that feel to it. So you can use these top controllers, but those are kind of limited. So another thing you can do, I'm going to go back to this, is you can go in here and say, okay, what if I want to give it like more like a watercolor or a painterly effect? You want to go under window brushes, brush libraries, sorry. And you want to choose, for example, watercolor right there. And obviously watercolor will have a component of opacity because watercolors, as you know, they kind of have that, like, if you have something behind this image, you might, path, you might see part of that image or part of what's behind because watercolors have that. Remember, you can also make it smaller or bigger. You can say, gosh, this is too thick. I'm going to go 0.5 and now it's much thinner. Or you might say, gosh, I don't like watercolor. Let me go and find something that is a brush library that is something different, like scroll pen ink. Maybe let's go calligraphic for the sake of it. Boom. So you get the picture, right? You can use what Illustrator pre-made by Illustrator. And I showed you that in the swatches. We'll talk about the swatches and color in a minute, because that's the next part of your illustration that you need to do is after you did all your strokes, you made the strokes look right, then you go in and color it, right? I mean, some people might color it first, but those two components, the coloring and the strokes, go together. So you can choose how you want, you know, this to be. And again, you can choose the size of your, as you can see, calligraphic has a lot of option. Right here, you can actually find more. But the bottom line is, and you can decide how thick you want it or how thin you want it. The other thing you can do is, so these are all stuff that are pre-made within Illustrator. What if I want to do something that I have control? I have full control over the shape of this stroke. And I can actually make it really like a little bit thicker, you know, right in this location where it turns, and a lot thinner right after, and then thicker again, like there's a little bottleneck there. So one of my favorite tools is this thing called the width tool, is right here. And the shortcut is Shift W. If you click on the width tool, and then you click on your shape and drag, all of a sudden, as you can see, it's going to start giving a shape to that. And you can do it as many times as you want. Like you might say, hey, I want this one to be thick, but then I want it to taper down. And then right after the curve, I want it to, oops, sorry, I messed up, to thicken up again. Remember, you can always go back in and redo it if you messed up. The beauty of this tool is you can do whatever you want. It's just really a powerful, amazing tool. There we are. And in fact, if you made that shape and later on you don't like it, you just go back in there again, Shift W. I always use the shortcut. You go back in there and then you say, gosh, this, I want it to be actually higher, or I want it to be thinner. Everything is at your fingertip and the sky is the limit. So I really love this width tool because you can really shape your lines however you please. There is no pre-made stuff in Illustrator. You make it as you go. So that's a really good tool for that. Now, before I jump to colors and finish this lecture, and then we go back to Canvas, but you'll notice in Canvas this week under demos, there is a file called Walk the Dogs. Walk the Dogs shows you is the intention of that file is to trace a sketch that I brought in as templated, a drawing that I brought in as templated, and trace it all, and then go in and add brushes to match what's in the templated image. In fact, maybe I should quickly show you. Let me see if I find, if not, actually, why don't we continue and show you, I show you colors, and then we open that file and play with that file. So at least you have all the theoretical information in one spot and in one continuous video. I don't have to go and hunt for that file for now. Any questions on that so far? Now, remember one thing before I let you have questions, that you can change the color right here. You can even give it a gradient. You remember the live paint allows you to dump the color both on strokes and fills. Any questions so far? Are you guys alive? Are you there? Because I cannot see you, and sometimes I wonder. Everybody there?
We're alive.
Am I talking too much? I promise I'm almost at the end. I always want to talk no more than 40 minutes because I know it gets tiring. It means I'm a student too. And when I go to lecture, after 40 minutes, my focus starts. But we start at 12:15. We're at 12:50. So I talked for 35 minutes. Give me 10 more minutes. Okay, thanks for answering, though. I appreciate it. As a teacher, it feels nice to have an audience. So the next step is colors. And in the not today, but next class, next Thursday, we have one last work in progress check, right? In which I look at your mascot and say, okay, it's top notch, or you know what, you should tweak that neutral color because the text doesn't stand out against it, or whatever else. And if you kind of followed all along and you turn it in by the Sunday, February 5th, life is good because you know you've worked hard and you got feedback and you should know where you stand and get a fabulous grade. But how do you next class bring in colors? You know, that color information can be tricky. So let me actually show you. So if you go in, sorry, this is the COVID stuff where I had a few students with COVID and I send them this information. But if instead of the COVID stuff, let's leave it behind, we do www.color.adobe.com. And I don't know if it has www, I think it's just color, adobe.com. Boom, you go into this interface. This is a Adobe software, is free. As long as you have an Adobe, you have purchased Adobe software and you have an Adobe membership, whatever you call it. I do. And by the way, I'm automatically logged in here. So sorry about that. It means I don't show you that I log in, but it's kind of faster this way. And I use this tool a whole lot, so it's convenient. But I want to show you with this one, you know, once you go and call adobe.com again, it's easy to log in. Where do you log in? I forget. I'm automatically logged in for so long, but explore a little bit. But the thing I want you to explore the most is these tabs up here. If you go and create, you can choose which kind of colors you want to start from. If it's analogous, monochromatic, triad, complementary, split complementary, et cetera, et cetera. If you go in analogous, as you can see what analogous means, I'm sure you're also studying in the 2D class, the 102, I believe, that should have already happened. But again, we have a class that talks about colors more in depth that I can do in terms of, you know, even making you mix them and stuff. But they're all analogous color. And the minute which you can start moving them around, you can see your palette changes dramatically. And let's say you really like this palette, but maybe not the teal. Let me see. There we are. Sorry, I'm trying to tweak this one so it's not as teal. Obviously, the problem is when you tweak this one, the whole thing gets tweaked, right? It means you kind of vary a little bit things by just dragging it around. But you see now this one is pinned down. I like it. And then I can decide what are the other ones. But the bottom line is you could decide which color palette you want. Let's say you really like this one. Or you can say, you know what, I'm going to start with monochromatic. I want something that is really kind of more on the monochromatic, and then I'm going to add just one, you know, color next. Or you can obviously do the triad. Bottom line is you can explore this and eventually get to a color scheme that you like. Let's say I like this color scheme. What do I do? How do I bring it into Illustrator? There are various ways to do it. The easy peasy way, if you don't want to do anything else, it's to take a screenshot of these colors. In Mac world, in screenshot is Command-Shift-4. If you do Command-Shift-3, it does a screenshot of the entire desktop. If you do Command-Shift-4, it shows you a little cursor that you can click and drag and just take a picture of that one area that you clicked and drag on. Boom. You could hear the camera kind of sound of the old cameras. That's what they did. And then here you can see is sitting there is a screenshot I did. So that's one way to go. Another way to go to make colors is to go under Explore. And in Explore, you can see it has palettes and palettes of colors. You know, like this one was taken from that image. You can see that. I like this. Wow, I like this color palette. I really do. I love that ochre orange color. So if you liked this color palette a whole lot, what you can do is you could obviously add it to your library. I'm going to do it. And I am already logged in. So it just told me you just got into Enrica 1. I call my library Enrica 1. Not very much imagination, but that's how it goes. Or you can download it as a JPEG right here. I'm going to download it as a JPEG. And it just did. It's called Adobe Color Green on Green. Or, oops, oh, did I lose it? Yes, I did for a second. Or you can download it as an ASE file. And I'm going to do that as well, so I can show you how you can load it as an ASE. JPEG is bitmap. ASE, everything stays vector. Screenshot, obviously, is a bitmap. So now you have, palettes in 3 different formats. One, you took a photo and is a screenshot. One, you download it straight from here as a JPEG. And one, you download it as an ASC file. I'll show you what it means. You can also copy if you're doing web design and you want to have it in your cascading style sheets. I know it sounds like I'm speaking Italian right now. My point is you can do all kinds of stuff. Another thing you can do is if you are logged in right here, you can go in your library. Or another thing you can do is, wow, look at that. You can upload a photo right here. So for example, if I click on here and I upload that Galileo photo that I showed you earlier, now my color palette shows up from that photo. Look how cool this is. Strangely enough, for some mysterious reason, instead of showing me that photo, it shows me similar photos. Oh, I see what it does. Actually, this is a search engine based on color schemes from a certain photograph. That's really interesting. By the way, this software constantly changes. I've been using it for 20 years, and I always discover new little features. That's really cool. So you can do stuff like that, but let's actually go in Enrica library and show you something else. Where is my library, though? I don't see it right now. One sec. There's also a color game that I haven't played with yet. Sorry, Twitch theme. So I'm looking, where is my library? Because it should be right here. But, oh, it's not. I don't want to load Creative Crowd, please. It got me out of there. Now it cannot let me go back to a create. It's very interesting. Let me go back to that. So I don't remember how to load. I thought it was as simple as clicking on Enrica My Library, but it doesn't look like it's there. So let me find it right here. Everything is kind of like right here, libraries. In my world is to explore because it constantly changes. They just give it a revamp, by the way. That means this color game wasn't there like a few months ago, or like, I don't remember the last time I went. Okay, but if you go under libraries, then like I just showed you right here, you can go in and let's say you like this color scheme, but it's a little bit too green. You want to add a different color in there, or actually, let me choose this one. There's too blue. Right here, you can download it as JPEG, or you can click on it. And if you click on it and you can go in and copy these colors and pick just one color from there, or you can say, edit this theme. You can go and say, you know what, I want to edit it because I don't like these to be so blue. So I'm going to separate them. So this one is a different shade of blue, or is maybe more like a neutral. So when you have stuff in your library, you can go in and completely, basically start it, or from there, and that completely changed most of it. So as long as you're logged in, you're given a library that somehow is right here. I don't know why I was looking under my name, but it's because I call my library Enrica 1. I think I had also a default library in which I had put a bunch of stuff like this. This I created for a website, and the site, it was a site for a painter called Sarah. So that was her color palette, because she's really likes those colors. She uses them a lot in their painting. So remember, this is a really fabulous tool. But now you might ask me, okay, Enrique, you've been tinkering with this software and even discovering more because of the new features they added, but how do I bring all that in Illustrator? If I was you, that's what I would be thinking. So let me show you. So let's say this is your mascot and you want to show me these color palettes that I just, brought in. Obviously, that I just found. Obviously, bring in the screenshot is a no-brainer. It's the same thing we just did. You go in File, Place. Make sure it's embedded because it's generally really small. Screenshots are PNGs. So I go in and look for screenshots, and it's the last one I did right here. And I make sure this is unchecked and say place. Boom. So this is it. And obviously, if I want it smaller, I hold the Shift key and make it smaller. I also showed you how I saved one of those color palettes as a JPEG. So let me make room for it. I do the same thing with JPEG. It's a bitmap. So I go and say File, Place, just like the screenshot. And I forgot what it was called. So Adobe something. Maybe not. I should have remembered the name, but let me go on my downloads. Oh, that's it. That's what I was trying to do. Sorry, 1 second. Let me give it one more day. Okay, let me go in downloads and find that last one that is the ASC file, because it's the most important. Oh, there it is. I found also the JPEG right there. It's all in downloads. And it's called Adobe. I was right. It's generally called Adobe Color, by the way, if you forget. Cool. So if I go in Illustrator right now and I want to bring in the JPEG, it's kind of redundant because it's the same of bringing this in, but I'm going to do it anyway really quick. And I promise this is the last piece I want to give you. There we are. It will bring it pretty big, as you can see. So again, you want to go in, hold the Shift key and make it smaller. And now some of you might ask me, okay, I understand, Enrique, this is how you bring the palette into the file so that I can show out to Enrique which palette I want to use. But how do I use these colors, right? Doesn't matter, by the way, if it's deformed. How do I get these colors into my swatches? How do I do that? So you use the eyedropper. I know it seems obvious, but you take the eyedropper. For example, I drop this, and now you will see that it's right here. And I open the swatches. And actually in my, guys, in my swatches, I want to show you something really neat that you can create your own folder, right? It's called New Color Group. So I'm going to do that. And I'm going to call it Enrique because I'm bringing all the colors that Enrique wants. And look, it's allowing me to bring in already the selected artwork. Boom, is already there. Then I'm going to go with the eyedropper and say, okay, but I also like this kind of grayish color. And now you grab it and you drag it onto your Enrique's folder. And I want this blue and do the same thing over and over again. Boom. Same here, right? If you decide that you like this weird yellow, you bring it in. So as long as you drop it by your folder is going to be all there in one spot. That is pretty sweet. The way this works is also right here, it allows you to load different swatches. So you don't only have these, but you can say, hey, I want gradients and I want gradients for foliage. All of a sudden right here, you can go in and create a shape and give it that gradient or that gradient. You know what I mean? And every time it adds it to your swatches because you're using it. And then if you want to see only the gradient swatches, you go in here. Wait, there is a way that you can say, I want to only, right here, sorry. You can say, I only want to see the gradient swatches, boom. Or I only want to see the color pattern swatches, look. There are only two, they're right there, boom and boom. So this palette is absolutely fantastic. I always love how Illustrator just makes it amazing and easy. But how do I bring in the ASE file, right? Now that we know what's going on. Sorry. Gosh, that's beautiful. Sorry, I'm actually making patterns. Ignore me, please. I will show you that, I promise. So how do I load the ASE palette now that I grab these and I don't need them, but I have that file called ASE? You can go under the swatches under here. And instead of when you go under swatch right here. You can say save swatch. By the way, if you made your own, you can save it as an ASE. Or if you want to load an ASE file, you go under Open Swatch Library, Other Library right here, and then you browse to your desktop where you have your ASE file right here. And you say Open, and now there it is. You have that palette. So you can go in and create shapes and just choose the colors from that palette. So that's pretty sweet as well. So bringing in colors is if their bitmap is a matter of file in place with an embedded option. If they're actually vector, you bring it in through the swatches by clicking on the options and choosing that. And you can even obviously choose spot color, right? And browse to a spot color. But anyway, so that's kind of what I wanted to show you today, is an overview on how to modify a typeface that you brought in, how to tweak your strokes to be more interesting, and how to bring in colors and even save them to your swatches. Any questions so far? Okay, so I'm going to actually stop the recording right now and go and show you that file of that is on in the demos of this week, and then I'm going to give you a break and we switch gear to the design side. Okay, let me see if I can stop the recording, stop the sharing, and now I can stop the recording.